Mesdames et messieurs, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another momentous day here at the Assembly Rooms. In a moment, John Gray will give a talk, and I hear it's going to be quite interesting, almost riveting. Almost. But in the meantime, by the way, 1792, July 1792, 11 harpers from all over the country gathered here. The music, of course, was collected and kit. A young organist run by Sedan's Cathedral there, Edward Bunting. Well, today, as a special treat, we have 4 harpers. I've never met them before, but I'm sure they're brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to play a few tunes for a few minutes, so give them a big round of applause, please. Ladies and gentlemen, before we ask John to take the windy podium, We're going to ask the harpers just to introduce themselves very briefly. And your name?
Grania Meyer,
Grania Meyer. And where are you from, Grania?
Moneyglass.
Moneyglass. Got all the way from Moneyglass. And in the middle we have
Kira's Harp.
Kira Taff. And where are you from, Kira?
I'm from Meath, but I've lived in Belfast for the last 20 years.
Oh, good. And this man here?
Adam O'Neill.
Adam O'Neill. And Adam O'Neill's a Belfast man, is that right? No, you're not.
No, I'm Ballymena.
Oh, a nuanced difference. And finally, but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we have
Evan Devlin. I'm Moneyglass Tim.
Moneyglass too. Big round of applause again, ladies and gentlemen. Rose Money was from Meath, one of the harpers who played here in 1792. So, without further ado, I hand the platform over to Mr. John Gray.
Citizens, so we gather again, and we will gather here as long as it is necessary to save the assembly rooms. We're gathered at a time of crisis for our city's listed buildings. The nearby cathedral buildings burnt down just a couple of weeks ago. That adds to a litany of disasters and failures of public intervention, including the fate of the Crumlin Road Courthouse and the North Street Arcade just round the corner, and at the time owned by the same property developers who currently own the assembly rooms. Too often, and as in the latter cases, reliance on developers to preserve our historic assets ends up as an invitation to arsonists. I don't accuse the developers of actually setting the fires. No, I don't. But let's say that it's highly advantageous to developers if their historic buildings burn down. Because once they've burnt down, all those listed building requirements vanish with the original structure. What happens on these occasions is that there is much wringing of hands after the event, and that is fundamentally useless. What is really needed is effective public intervention before disaster can occur. We stand here in front of the assembly rooms, a prime candidate for the next bonfire. Empty since 2000 and increasingly derelict, you can see the trees growing out of the roof. You can see the pigeons flying in and out. It is a listed building and now on the at-risk register. Indeed, it is at risk. Why should we care? It is the oldest public building in Belfast, dating from 1769. Here, that famous assembly of harpers took place in 1792. Many other important cultural and civic events in that Enlightenment era took place here. It is true that in the 19th century, it was converted into a bank and drastically altered, though this was done in some style by our leading architects. That was a century in which it has justly been said that the town devoted itself to God and mammon and was happy to forget its Enlightenment era. But where do we stand now in a city that likes to define itself as one of culture? We stand in front of a derelict building and are still told that the best that we can hope for is that it may become yet another boutique hotel, perhaps just as successful as the now bankrupt George Best Hotel in another listed building in Donegal Square South. That use, even if successful, would be a travesty of the potential of the building. We had high hopes when in December of last year, the City Council's Strategic Policy and Resources Committee unanimously passed a resolution mandating officers to pursue acquisition and to report back. When we gathered here in July, we had to report that we had heard no news of progress. What we have heard are rumours that the developers, Castlebrook, are only willing to deal if the authorities are willing to sacrifice Writers Square. One has to ask, who governs Belfast? The City Council or developers? It can justly be said that too much has been given away to Castlebrook for this site already. They must be made to recognise that in the case of the assembly rooms, civic interest comes first, and that it cannot be used as a bargaining counter for other totally unacceptable ambitions. If Castlebrook actually had the interests of the community at heart, they would make a gift of the assembly rooms to the city.
Hear, hear.
I can only echo the words of our Lord Mayor, Tina Black, speaking at the launch of the Harp's Alive Festival in July, when she said that she wanted to see the assembly rooms acquired sooner rather than later. Now, as we gather here again, it remains the case that despite persistent inquiries made to council officers, nothing of substance has been forthcoming. I still hope that our council are allies in this matter. And why would they not be? But 10 months have now passed since that resolution of December last year, mandating action, and still silence reigns. Even the councillor who proposed the motion in December of last year has heard nothing further and knows nothing more. I have to say that on an issue as important as this, the public are entitled to know the state of play. To put this into perspective, it is as though the Guildhall in London or the Mansion House in Dublin had either been allowed to fall into ruins or sold off as boutique hotels. The assembly rooms are equally important to us. Consider the small town of Granard in the Irish Midlands as an example of what should be done. It was here that the first recorded assembly of harpers took place in the market house in the 1780s. That market house is now immaculately restored condition. That is small town Granard. Its achievement is a standing reproach to would-be big-town Belfast. In July, Frank Bunting, a descendant of Edward Bunting, was here, and he, like the rest of us, was shocked by the spectacle of the assembly rooms. He said the building should become one of Belfast's cultural and tourist centerpieces. It's been slow coming, but it's not too late for the City Council to act. Quite so. Consider the verdict of the Ulster Architectural Heritage Society. It is shocking that such an architecturally important and historically significant building can come to be treated as a mere derelict eyesore. Certainly, we will not tolerate a situation in which the whole thing is once again put on the long finger, as has been the case for many years now. That's why we're gathering again here today on another appropriate date. It is a national day of celebration of the heritage of the harp. Nor is this the end of the matter. Reclaim the Enlightenment has agreed to organise an ongoing and systematic campaign on the issue. This will involve forming the widest possible partnership to progress matters, to detail the sorry previous history of failure, and to develop detailed plans for a positive future for the building. You're entitled to know our preliminary thoughts about the best possible public use of the building. Let us call it by its original name, the Assembly Rooms, a place for citizens to assemble and engage in a multitude of... Thank you, Frankie. What would I do without Frankie? A multitude of activities. We're also suggesting a more specific and appropriate focus, a place to celebrate Belfast's late 18th century Enlightenment era, when this time was a watchword for progressive ideas. That can embrace our harpers, our opposition to slavery. It was here that the scheme for a Belfast-based slaving company was defeated, thanks to the actions of the watchmaker Thomas McCabe, who actually had his shop just over the road. And of course it can also be a place where we can celebrate the United Irishmen, but it will also be a place, or would also be a place, where we would recognise those who had contrary views, where we would explore the commercial and inventive genius of the time at that time. So, what do? We demand action to secure this iconic building for public use and to enable our city to demonstrate its new Enlightenment era. Thank you for coming today. We'll now return to the First Presbyterian Church again when our harpers will play us a few more tunes. Also, Reclaim the Enlightenment publications are on sale, and if you're not a member of Reclaim the Enlightenment, you can join. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, by the way, see, Raymond, who's the historian of the First Presbyterian Church, is reminding me that when going back to the First Presbyterian Church, we're going back to Thomas McCabe's church in the day. Thank you very much.
Well done, John. Wonderful speech, well delivered. Thank you, sir.
Great equipment.